The sponsor of this episode is Chadwell Supply, an OG in the multifamily industry. Chadwell is the largest privately owned maintenance and repair supplier, and they deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. To find out how Chadwell Supply will make your day better, visit www.chadwellsupply.com/difference.
Well, welcome to another episode of Decoding Multifamily, powered by the Multifamily Media Network. The Multifamily Media Network is a free platform on a mission to inspire the next generation of multifamily leaders. With over 16 different weekly podcasts from a roster of hosts who are not only multifamily icons and experts, but also industry icons who practice what they preach. You can get the latest insights, trends, success stories from the multifamily world and stay informed each week on the podcast that the podcast produces from our content creators. You can find those latest podcasts at multifamilymedianetwork.com. Don't forget to subscribe so you get the weekly newsletter that announces all the different podcasts and podcast episodes that have dropped, as well as the blogs. So tune in, get inspired, and transform your multifamily journey with us. I want to introduce again my great co-host, Suzanne Hobson. Suzanne, tell our viewers who our guest is this week.
Thanks, Paul, for that great introduction. And yes, I am really looking forward to this conversation today because it is with someone that a lot of you already know. Her name is Stephanie Versin, and she is someone I've just recently gotten acquainted with, and I find her absolutely fascinating, which I think you will as well. Stephanie, why don't you tell our audience what you do and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, Suzanne and Paul, for having me here today. I've excited. I think, I started 25 years ago in the hospitality industry. So I've been a newbie in the multifamily, as I've only spent maybe 5 years in the multifamily. So most of my career was in the hospitality industry, which sometimes it's a little overwhelming to come to a new industry because you don't know anybody and nobody knows you, and you have a different point of view, which I think it's exactly the point. You have a different point of view. I've been lucky enough to join great multifamily companies in my past 5 years. And I've been also very lucky in my last position to have a complete centralized operating model, which now I really realize how special it was, knowing how many people are trying to go to that path in our industry. Nowadays, I'm happy to have started my consulting firm. I'm helping several of my clients to go onto this centralization journey, and as we know, not one size fits all, especially in centralization. So it's very interesting to me to be at that moment here in this industry and to help key players, operators, to go onto this journey, which is a very important journey now in our industry.
Yeah, Stephanie, and of course, that's one of my favorite topics, centralization. We recently had the opportunity to see you on stage at Blueprint talking about just that, and it was really compelling. That whole conference was compelling, but I thought you really drilled into what operators are speaking to, which is how do you do it? And what are some of the reasons behind that? So I wanted to take this opportunity to just ask you, not only did you participate, but what did you get out of Blueprint? If you were to say the most important takeaway, what do you think that would have been?
That's a great question, Suzanne. I think when I was on that panel, I realized, and I know that, but I realized more and more that centralization means very different things for every operators. You cannot just say, well, that's what you need to do. It's 1, 2, 3. And because it's based on so many factors. It's based on who you are, your size, your geographical density, your geographical spread, the class of asset that you are operating or managing, what type of master agreement you have signed with your owners as well, etc., etc. So it's not just like this is easy, because it's not. And I think we are all learning slowly but surely and very humbly that there is no one path or one solution, which is great. There is multiple. You can start with, centralizing your administration duty, remove that from your on-site team so they can really be focused on leasing. You can centralize your leasing. You can centralize your renewals. You can centralize also your maintenance. But it is not new in the sense of the big REITs have been doing that for over a decade. When you look at UDR, when you look at Avalon Bay, Essex, they've done it a long time ago because they knew it was for them, their critical mass in some ways. It made sense. But what's really new now is the fact that now smaller, middle-sized operators are looking at it being like, well, thanks to technology, I can actually also do that. It's not as much of an investment that it used to be, where only REITs were able to do that. So that's what's really interesting to me, is that there is a true pivoting in our industry, that anybody of 10,000 units or more are looking at it being like, what can I do to basically save a little bit of cost and make my team smarter and elevate my teams on site to do more meaningful things with the customer, with the prospect and their resident.
Yeah, I mean, that it totally resonates, I think, with a lot of our listeners. I just had some conversation with a client and with some others yesterday about even smaller firms deciding to centralize some of those main functions, not only just to save on cost, but really just streamlining efficiencies. It appears we've had this break, right? This lull in transacting. And so people are going to their operations and they're really starting to lift the lid and look underneath and really determine how to become more efficient. And the word has revived again. I know we call it all kinds of things, specialization, automation, but it's really the same thing, although customized to the operator. Would you say that that's true?
It is true. And I think, instead of calling it centralization, I think we can call it optimization of a sales process, optimization of an operating model. Role specializations have been existing forever in many, many industries. So we can call it role specialization. We can say, well, instead of looking at leasing in a big bubble, it's actually different sub-activities that we can hire specific teams to only do that. I think what's unfair is that for years, for decades, we've been asking our leasing managers on site to be good on the phone, good qualifying the leads, good at touring, good at closing, good at being fast in processing the leads, good at etc., etc., etc. And not everybody is good at everything, thank God. So the roles, the role specialization, I think, is very important, because it's not removing jobs. It's actually making it better. It's actually making sure that people are where they should be working at in the skills they have that they are really good at, and make them even better at it with better training and becoming an expert. So to me, this is a win-win situation. We always have to remember centralization or role specialization doesn't mean cutting jobs. It's actually making them much more interesting for the people who are doing it.
Absolutely. One of the things that really stood out about you in particular, and still does, you just spoke to it, is the fact that you've normalized it. The fact that you bring in expert experience from outside of the industry and you speak to that it's been here for a long, long time with some solid data that it helps our listeners. And again, and you're probably finding this in your practice, but people don't know where to begin and they're afraid of it. They're afraid of the change management. Are they going to be able to get their teams on board for it? And so what you've said really resonates. It's normalizing centralization, because it really is a function of just making things more efficient and better. You also said another thing about experts, and do you find as you've been doing this, that that role specialization has actually helped people just by virtue of having limited accountabilities become better and better and better at it because that's all that they're doing. I mean, can you speak to that at all?
Yes, I am, and twofold here. You actually hire differently as well when you have a role specialization structure, which is you are really looking at very specific skills with very specific background and experiences. So in some ways, you are getting a little better at recruiting as well because you know exactly what you need. It's not just like, well, if you have done leasing before, it's going to be okay. No, I want to make sure that you have done inbound, outbound calls, that you know to follow a script, that you have done it before. You also specialize in your training. You have to change the way you train the people because your generic training doesn't work anymore. It needs to be specialized to this role. So I feel I have experienced that my specialized associates have been much happier by doing exactly what they are good at. They've been trained at, they are expert at it. So when you're expert at something, it just feels good and easy and the retention is higher. And I know we've mentioned it before, but I have lived it. I have lived the fact that people are happier and just want to stay because they love what they are doing because they are good at what they are doing. So to me, I hope we are going to see it going faster and faster in our industry, that people are going to find their niche. They are going to find where they should be in so many ways. So it's not just like, well, you need to start as a leasing manager. You need to be good at everything. And maybe if you are good at everything, at some point you'll get to the next level and the next level. Some people actually do not want to get to the next level. They don't want to manage people. They just want to be really good at being an inside sales associate or being a leasing coordinator. And it's okay to be just a leasing coordinator. It's actually fantastic to be an excellent one.
Yeah, you hit on another one, career pathing. And, that's been a big topic on our podcast and in conversations, small and big. And, people are not looking at that the same way, obviously, anymore. Have you found a lot of variation, or are you seeing some similarities or themes in how we're now doing career pathing with centralization differently? Or is there a theme?
It's not so much a theme as I was saying, like really adapting your job description needs to be adapted to what you are really looking for, and it needs to be as narrow as you want it to be narrow. Because again, people are very good at 2 or 3 things. I'm very good at 2 or 3 things. If you give me 10, I'll be average for sure. So have a very narrow job description. Find really the person that fits those 3 bullet points that are in your job description. And that's the winning path here, because they are very good at three things, and that's the 3 things you need. Don't try to find someone that at some point will do this and maybe this, and because it's not going to work. We know that. We've been there. We failed people over and over again by trying to make them what they are not. So making sure that we're brave enough to have very small job descriptions, things that are very, very detailed to what you are very much looking for. And you will find that person because you put that energy out there to be like, this is the person I need.
Love it. Yeah. And again, my experience very similar to yours. And at that hiring point, spending a lot of time and energy there, because that's really the beginning of not only just current staff and assessing where they want to fit in to the new organization structure, but also who's coming in through your filters, and how do you really determine those innate traits people coming in. It's just fascinating to me. But let's take a slight shift. And last, Paul, you have any questions on centralization? I know we talked about it.
No, I don't have any questions. I do want to say that at the Blueprint Conference, by far the most talked about topics were both centralization and AI. And I can say, Stephanie, that your panel, I thought, did an excellent job out of all the panels that I went to in really kind of putting a better understanding on some of the options that are out there available. If it's all right, Suzanne, I wanted to ask a question off topic. I want to back up a little bit because you indicated, Stephanie, that you came from a hospitality background. I've found over the years interviewing people that multifamily kind of has a reputation for being slow to adopt new technologies or new things, and they oftentimes look to hospitality for where they are before they adopt something. They'll kind of let the hospitality industry, try things out. As a matter of fact, I've been really impressed with how many people seem to come from hospitality to get into multifamily. Suzanne, our last guest that we had on Decoding Multifamily, came from hospitality into multifamily, and everybody knows Dom Beveridge, who came from hospitality into multifamily. So I kind of wanted to find out, Stephanie, a little bit about that journey, that change for you. What were you doing in hospitality, and how did it relate to multifamily? A little bit more on that.
Sure. Throughout my career in hospitality, I was mainly doing marketing, loyalty marketing, a lot of overseeing 20, 25 hotels in a country, for example. And to me, the multifamily is very relevant because I used to say, well, in hospitality, people stay one day or a long weekend. In a multifamily, they stay at least a year. But the principle of customer services, customer experience, and the marketing side is very similar. Instead of having a Zillow, you have an Expedia in the hospitality industry. You have your own website. You have your brand website with multiple locations. So on the marketing side, marketing acquisition side, it was very easy to me to transfer my marketing strategies or marketing experience, I would say. The most difficult part was to understand that sometimes we didn't want loyalty in our resident because we wanted people to move out so we could get a rent increase. So that was the most difficult part for me to adapt. I was like, what do you mean you don't want people to stay 10 years? You don't want loyalty. And that's changing a little bit as well, because I think we realize that overall, it's of course sometimes great to have rotation and turns, but it's also having residents that understand your brand, like your brand, and wants to move to another sister property is valuable. So building a brand and building loyalty to your brand is actually becoming also valuable in multifamily. But again, as you said, Paul, I think sometimes multifamily is a little bit behind. They're catching up on hospitality. But back in the days, I was using a CRM, for example, automation and email marketing automation. And we didn't have AI as much back in the days, but I'm glad to see that now using a CRM it's nothing new anymore. Everybody is using a CRM for the leasing side. I have not seen people using the CRM as much on the marketing side yet, but I know it's coming because the CRM solutions that are out there do both. They cover the entire life cycle from a prospect to you move in to you are becoming a resident, you are becoming a past resident, and you are becoming a new prospect again. So this is coming as well. To me, is the CRM that we are onboarding nowadays for leasing will be for marketing as well.
That opens up a whole another podcast.
Another podcast.
Chadwell Supply is the proud sponsor of the Multifamily Media Network. Chadwell Supply is the largest privately owned MRO supply company and is committed to the multifamily industry. They deliver orders the next day from local warehouses across the United States. Chadwell Supply offers valuable resources such as maintenance training, a dedicated renovations team, and procurement platform assistance, ensuring multifamily properties operate more efficiently. Partnering with Chadwell Supply helps communities stand out in an increasingly competitive market. Learn more at chadwellsupply.com /difference.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So good. It actually segues in nicely to another thing I wanted to ask you about, and that's just how marketing strategies are changing in this time. And you just named one of them. Do you see anything else that you find is trending or you think is going to be coming right around the corner that maybe we need to keep our eyes open for?
Yes, and that's something also I'm going to make a parallel with the hospitality industry. So in this hospitality industry, marketing and sales have always been under one roof, under the same person. You had the director of sales and marketing, no big deal. In a multifamily, I was shocked enough when I came there for the first time to see that the leasing was handled by ops and the marketing was handled by me. And I always thought that the division of this was never very smart. So my last position, I was overseeing marketing and leasing and resident services, basically the entire customer journey. I think this is what the entire industry is going to go towards. You cannot do smart marketing without speaking with leasing. How was those leads this week? Is it good, not good? Which channel do you think the leads are the best? Marketing has to have that feedback from leasing to be smart enough. And having marketing and leasing under the same roof, overseen by the same person, is really very, very important to me. Otherwise, you do marketing in a silo and I'm going to spend money and I will never know if it's actually very efficient. According to my marketing KPIs, I'm doing good. But according to the leasing KPIs, I have no idea.
Yeah, totally agree. Had that in my last organization. I put everything under one roof, and it was you would have thought I had just flipped the whole world upside down. It was.
You
I
did.
I probably did at that time, smaller company, but yeah, I mean, I think to your point, other industries have been doing that, and it just made sense when you were mapping out the customer journey too. And all of the touch points and the connections between those touch points. It just really made a lot of sense. But there was a flaw that I ran into. Maybe you could give an answer to this. And it really was that now, what are we measuring the revenue side of the house with? Is that it? Are we responsible for all the income under that umbrella in sales and marketing? Is it occupancy? Because we know so many other factors affect occupancy that aren't just marketing and sales related. How did you measure that? Like, how did you know that your leasing was on top of it and your marketing was and ops to get the end result?
Yes. Well, thanks to the CRM, you can really mark all the leads. You know where those leads are coming from, which marketing source. So that's a big A plus for a CRM. It's to make sure you can actually understand where are those leads coming from. I always was a big component of quality of leads is much better than quantity. Back in the days, we needed to have volume of leads. We needed to spend money, and the more leads, the merrier. No, it's not. It's actually the least lead, the best, because there's so much noise nowadays. With device and cell phones, you can send leads all day long through ILSs, and it doesn't mean that you are what is your intention? So making sure that you really look at every marketing channel's conversion ratio from a lead to a lease, but also from a leasing perspective, looking at the conversion ratio at every step. So from an inquiry to a qualified lead, from a qualified lead to a tour, what's my conversion ratio per channel? From the tour to an application, what happened here? Why is it so low or so high? And then from the application to the lease. I think you have to be very, very intentional and granular in making sure that you don't just look at, it's big picture, like, from this to this. You have to look at where are you falling short, actually, in which step of the customer journey you didn't look at that conversion ratio. because the evil is in the details here, especially nowadays when you have so much volume of leads, and it's a very complex journey from the inquiry to signing a lease. There's so many steps, so many touch points that could go wrong. So I'm always a good proponent of looking at every step of the journey. How are we doing it? What's the conversion? Why is it not converting?
Yeah, the devil in the details. You're so right. Which then, plays into, you got to have a great CRM that you have visibility into, especially if you're scaling fast, because you don't have time to figure these conversions out on your own.
No.
And yeah, I totally agree with you. The visibility of that at all levels of the organization can also pinpoint where there's break in process. You're speaking my language, which is process. I love it.
Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for that. And the conversion ratios as KPIs. I think that's a really great indicator of, are we going to make it or are we not going to make it? He also said something else about the least amount of leads, making sure they're qualified leads. That's a big problem. I have seen clients that are still all about the number of leads. We're looking at that every week, and our conversions we've lowered the bench, right? We've lowered the bar so that we can make up for that huge amount of leads now that we've got. And it's also inefficient because it wastes a lot of the leasing specialist's time going through leads that are not qualified. So I'm
it's
glad
horrible. It's really horrible, and that's where I think the technology here helps tremendously, like your virtual leasing agent AI that kind of nurture the lead before giving it to your leasing agent is so important, because otherwise those leasing agents are inundated with leads that have low intention, and I'm sorry, but I don't have time for you that wants to move in 6 months, because I need to fill up my units today or yesterday in that matter. So I think it's the technology here again is really helping us to be much more efficient and increase the productivity of the team.
Yeah, agreed. And you just got into tech innovations with the leasing scheduler, the AI leasing agent. What are some misconceptions? I know this just came up in my, but what are some of the misconceptions about a leasing assistant that you've seen?
What I have observed is that we are asking our leasing assistant agents to do a lot on site, to do everything basically on site, and more than what their job description is saying. And it's impossible to be efficient if you are not focused on 1, 2, or 3 tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I think we are setting them up for failure on a daily basis, and we are not also paying them very well. So we are expecting someone that is the only person generating revenue in the organization to be very good at everything and to do everything, and on top of it to not be very well paid, but still be very motivated to tour 10 times per day. And that's where I'm like, I'm hoping we're going to also have that type of dialogue coming up soon, which is you cannot pay your leasing agents, leasing associates, on-site leasing team, like barely surviving and expecting them to be good salespeople. You have to place good salespeople, and for having good salespeople, you have to actually compensate them and have good incentive for those salespeople to perform. We are just missing the boat here in multifamily. I think the hospitality industry understood it a long time ago, and it's coming. I think it's coming. It's just going to take a little time because we think we're going to save money, but at the end of the day, it doesn't bring anything to your NOI to have a leasing associate that is not motivated to tour because she's overwhelmed or he's overwhelmed with so many other things to be done as well.
Yeah, totally. And, again, to your point, I think we're starting to see that. I've seen several companies like level the playing field between the engagement, whatever you want to call them, engagement specialist, the concierge, the
Yes.
resident manager, and then the salesperson by flattening that rate now you've got different career paths, you've got different incentives. You're really fitting the incentives to what the actual job requires. And yeah, I
And
agree with you.
and
Yeah.
it goes back to role specializations. If you hire a salesperson, they are going to be very good at selling, but they are not going to want to do the rest of whatever this a leasing manager would do. And someone who just want to be a resident manager because they want to take care of residents are actually not sales managers, rarely both. So let's implement role specialization on site. So you really have your sales people that only do sales, and you have your resident community manager that takes care of your residents. Makes a lot of sense to me.
We've got about 7 minutes left. Suzanne, why don't we talk a little bit about building a brand?
Yeah. That's right in your wheelhouse too, Stephanie. Tell us a little bit about why that's important and where do you begin?
I'm going to start with where do we begin with a brand? I think it's important to always have the customer in mind, because if we do not look at our customer or look after our customers, we will be failing in building a brand or being a brand. I think you have to really look at the customer journey in details again, experiencing yourself. How does it feel to call my call center, my on-site team? How are they responding to answering the phone? What type of question am I being asked? How is my tour being handled? Really going through the experience that you are providing online and on site to your customer to understand two things. What are the winning, where are we very good at, and what we need some love or make some progress. What are the pain points for my customers? And listening to feedback, listening to read every reviews. When I read every reviews, good and bad, on why are we failing here? Why did we not provide an excellent experience? And good brands have that reaction to always look at everything through the customer lens. And I think we're getting there. We have very great brands in the multifamily, becoming great brands. I mean, Cortland, Bozzuto, related properties are amazing brands. But why? Because they are really looking at it from a customer point of view. They are developing specific programs for resident engagement. They are really looking at it from how can they have chief experience customer on their staff to make sure that the customer has a place. It's not just like it's a sales process and once you are in for a year. So building a brand starts with making sure you really listen to your customer and their feedback. Otherwise, I think it's not going to work, really.
So it's not the logo?
I know. Yes. A logo and a tagline and you'll be all set.
All set to go. Yeah, and I think that the conversation around the customer journey is also becoming, more natural, right? And that's
Yes.
what we have to do, especially in the technology realm, where we're continuing to develop technology and hopefully less friction.
And that's going to be a true distinction in our industry, because there is not that many big brands yet, and it's highly fragmented. So that at some point in 5 years we're going to sit down and a lot of small operators will have been gobbled up by the biggest, and that's how the industry is going. So you have to be good with your customer. You have to prove your point that you are a valuable brand to stay alive.
Yeah. Well, I know we only have a couple minutes left, and we always ask the big question at the end. And this really is about your leadership, your wisdom, your experience. But what would you give as a piece of advice for people maybe going into that sales and marketing realm, and they're new leaders, or they're on that track? What piece of advice could you give them that you would maybe say you learned in your, your earlier years?
Yes.
Would be valuable. Yeah.
I would say listen more than talk. Always listen and ask questions. because we always assume we know and we don't. And I learned so much more when I ask questions and I just wait for the answer from my team, from why are we doing it this way? Why? So listening is very, very important, because that's why you actually get this, most of it, the solution, or you understand where is the problem. And I don't talk a lot. So this podcast is probably the most I've been talking this week.
We're so grateful too. For sharing so much. Thank you.
So Stephanie, if someone wants to reach out to you and contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn is probably the best way and the easiest way for everyone. Thank you, Paul.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for being with us. It's been great. Love to have you back again to find out more about what you're working on and what's happening. But I do want to remind our viewers that if you want to find out more about not only this podcast, but other podcasts offered by the Multifamily Media Network, go to multifamilymedianetwork.com, subscribe to the newsletter, listen to some other great podcasts, as well as get some of the great blogs that are out there that are coming out every week. So thank you, Suzanne. Thank you, Stephanie. And we'll be back soon with another episode of Decoding Multifamily.
Thank you both so much. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you again to Chadwell Supply for sponsoring this episode. Chadwell Supply delivers unforgettable service with next-day delivery, online and in-person maintenance training, and procurement platform assistance to make ordering simpler. Visit www.chadwellsupply.com/difference to learn how Chadwell Supply will make your day